Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm going to be reviewing the new album from Vinyl Theater, STARCRUISER. Vinyl Theater is a alternative and pop rock group that I reviewed their last album here on the channel, Origami, that came out last year in one of my catch-up review segments that I used to do where I would review tons of projects I didn't get around to reviewing when they first came out in this really kind of quick format, I guess you could say. And I liked Origami. I thought it was a good album. It didn't blow me away or anything like that, but it was a solid project. And I do wish, in hindsight, that I got to talk about the album in full, in like a full-length review. The reason why I didn't was because I didn't hear the album until I think it was a few months after it was released or so. But for a couple reasons, I wish I had reviewed that album in full, because, I did like the album. Vinyl Theater are a smaller group. I would have liked to share the album, hopefully, with some of you guys. But also because comparing my thoughts on this album I'm going to be talking about here today in full compared to what my thoughts on that album were, in a more fleshed out format than what I was able to put out in that catch-up review, I think would have been pretty interesting, considering STARCRUISER, at least in my opinion, is an improvement over Origami and is a pretty great album overall. Now, this album marks the first project released from this group after the departure from Fueled by Ramen, their former label. And I do understand that when they were, on that label, there were some, problems, I guess you could say, between them and the label. It's been noted in the past that Fueled by Ramen are kind of, more focused on their more popular acts most of the time. Lots of times the smaller artists on the label don't exactly get the same treatment as the bigger ones. And Vinyl Theater, like I said before, aren't exactly a super big group, and there was maybe some problems going on there. But now Vinyl Theater have left Fueled by Ramen and have released this album here, not long after their last. Like I said, Origami only came out in, I believe it was in the first half of last year at some point. So it hasn't been all that long. But the jump in quality is still there. I feel like STARCRUISER is definitely an improvement over Origami, and this is an album that I was very excited to talk about just because there's a lot to really take in with this project. The sound of this project, Vinyl Theater really don't go all too crazy or out there with any new sounds or anything like that. There is some new experimentation in there, but none of it I feel like is all that far out of their, ballpark, I guess you could say. There are some more electronic elements thrown into this project. However, I think that these work out rather well, considering that the album seems to have sort of a loose theme of, like science fiction and like space travel, I guess. Tying that back to the title of the album, STARCRUISER, I guess you could see the parallels there. So I thought overall that the electronic kind of elements added a bit to the just kind of science fiction-y atmosphere that the album had going for it at times, I guess you could say. I don't feel like any of the elements that were added were too, out there or just didn't fit well with the sound of the group. I feel like they were able to combine the kind of poppier alternative rock that they've done before in the past, like on Origami, but shifted it up a little bit here. And I know this isn't the first time the group has experimented with some electronic elements before. However, the way it's done here on this project, I feel, just really adds to the atmosphere of the record and kind of this, space travel, like, feel to it, I guess you could say. That's kind of what I got when listening to it, at least. There are some other types of sounds that the band pulls from across this project. On the track Knock Knock, they are kind of pulling from some more trappier, more modern sounding percussion, which, if you've followed my channel to any extent, you've seen my reviews for some other alternative groups and pop rock groups that have kind of branched out into using some trappier instrumentation in their works. You would know that typically I'm not really a fan at all. I think I've said that more than enough at this point on this channel. So when I heard some of the trappier instrumentation coming on this track, I was a bit hesitant. However, I think that this track actually ends up being pretty good, and I feel like it's actually a pretty good example of a band in this, genre, this alternative rock, pop rock, whatever you want to call it, incorporating some elements of, trap, modern hip-hop, I guess you could say, taking that and adding it into their sound in a way that, works, I guess you could say. And I feel like it works here because it doesn't really feel like Vinyl Theater are just kind of hopping on a trend for the sake of hopping on a trend and getting some popularity from it. I feel like they're incorporating it into the sound because they genuinely want to incorporate that sound, and I just feel like the track overall has a lot of positive qualities going for it outside of this bit of change up in the percussion here. I feel like it's also a pretty catchy track as well, and overall probably one of the more solid cuts on the record overall. Definitely a good example of the incorporation of the trappier instrumentation into this genre. I feel like this is a song I'm going to be pointing to in the future if this trend keeps up and more artists keep, not doing it all too well. This is an instance where it's done right, and I do have to give props for that. The band also decides to, use a more acoustic sound on the closing track, Dream of Me, which, typically, it's not super uncommon for bands like Vinyl Theater on their projects to have a song, like this, a more acoustic, slower cut in there. And typically, it's not really my thing when bands tend to do this. However, I do really like this track here. I think it's a nice closer to the album. I like how the instrumentation kind of switches up here a bit more. And I do like the vocals on this track as well. And I like how it's kind of catchy too. And that's another thing about the project as a whole. I think the vocals across this project are great as well. That's something I liked about Origami, and it carries on into this project as well. There's many catchy hooks spread throughout this project that are going to get stuck in your head on the first listen. And even on some of the cuts that are less catchy, the vocals are still really top-notch. I really like them here. And they make this closing track stand out even more too, just because the delivery here on the track is a bit more believable, I feel, than what many other bands in this lane tend to do. Lots of times it just comes across as, they're trying to have a slower track on the album for the sake of having one. But here, I feel like this track conceptually makes sense in the context of the record and just sounds very good overall, even, taking out of the context of the rest of the record. It's a solid closer to the album, another one of my favorites in the track listing, and just a great song overall. A reoccurring theme that I noticed throughout many of the lyrics here on this album was, just kind of moving on and just positivity and, looking at the band in the situation that they found themselves in the creation of this album, with leaving Fueled by Ramen and all of that. Kind of makes sense that these would be reoccurring themes here on this project, considering that now they're independent, they're on their own, they're making their own music, and it's kind of a new start for them as well. They have fans that are clearly interested in hearing their music, and they're, pretty happy making this album of theirs, and are, happy for people to hear it pretty much. They're happy to start this new chapter in their career as a band, and that's very apparent on tracks like Our Song and Feel It All that kick off this project. Two back-to-back, two of my favorites in the track listing. I just kind of like the upbeat feel that they have going for them, and it's not upbeat in a way where it begins to feel cheesy or forced. It's just done in a way where it feels very genuine, and given that, the situation that the band has kind of found themselves in, leaving Fueled by Ramen, all of that, kind of having to do this album on their own, it's happy to see that they're, in a very positive place in that regard. And I think it wore off on this project in the best way possible, because this project just feels a bit inspiring at times, a bit upbeat, in the best way possible. And the instrumentals reflect this as well, many times having that, poppier sensibility that you would expect from this group. Like I mentioned before, many catchy choruses, the electronic elements play into this as well. It just creates a very enjoyable atmosphere, I would say, and I like that overall, though there are moments in the track listing where the themes on the album do tend to get a bit darker, like on the track Never Thought This Would Happen, where it seems that the narrator of this track is describing how they never, suspected that they would, end up in a situation where they're, addicted to pills, as it says in the song itself, and just, seeming that they need to find a way to escape the problems of real life. And, I guess you could say that the pills in question here in the song are just, maybe just a metaphor for anything out there that people use to get away from their problems. And despite all this darker theme to the track, it's still a very catchy song that, got stuck in my head relatively easily and is a pretty enjoyable track. While I like the majority of this record, the vast majority of it that is, there is one, particular track that I feel like maybe is a little weaker than the rest, that being the track We Make the Music. Not a bad song by any means. There are things I like about it. I feel like it's a catchy song. I like the instrumental to it, but there are some elements in this track I feel like are a little bit off. I wasn't really a big fan of the kind of nonsense filler-like lyrics that are used. I feel like they were better used on some other tracks on the album, like the beforehand mentioned Never Thought This Could Happen to Me. And just the lyrics in general, they're kind of, the band reflecting on their, the fact that they're a band and all that, and how people react to their music to an extent. It's kind of a meta track in a sense, and I can kind of understand why the fillerish lyrics are present on here conceptually for the song, but I don't know, it just didn't click with me all that much. And I feel like the lyrics are maybe a little bit out there compared to some of the other ones present on the album. It doesn't really fit in quite as well as some of the other lyrics present here on this project. Not a, not a bad song by any means. Like I said, there's elements to it that I like. It's still an enjoyable track overall, but it's probably my least favorite on the album. But, that said, the fact that I still do enjoy my least favorite song on the album does mean that the rest of the songs on here are pretty great overall. And overall, I feel like this is a very great album, especially for a pop rock, alternative rock record. This is one that you need to check out if you're a fan of that genre. And I'm really happy that Vinyl Theater were able to make an album this great because, like I said, with Origami, I liked that album, but I didn't think it was fantastic or anything, didn't blow my mind or anything quite like that. But I felt like the band had potential to release a great project in the future. I just didn't expect it to be this soon, to be completely honest, because like I said, that was only last year when they dropped that project, and this project here, they've already grown so much, I feel. And I definitely feel that in the future they have the potential to grow even more if, the jump between that project and this one had this much, increase in quality. But yeah, this is definitely a great album. I love the kind of science fiction almost concept going through it. I love the kind of positive themes, talking about moving on and all that, and how that ties back to the band themselves. I love how catchy this project is. I love the instrumentals. I love the incorporation of different sounds here. There's so much to really like here on this project, and it's definitely an album that's going to stay in rotation for me for a while, to say the least. And it's definitely a project that should be in your rotation if you're a fan of pop rock, alternative rock, that whole kind of subsection of music. If you like that general sound, I think you're really going to like this project, or at least find something worth enjoying here in this album's track list. But yeah, with that said, that is just my own personal opinion on Vinyl Theater and their new album STARCRUISER. Feel free to leave your own opinion down in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more music-related content, other album reviews, track lists, track reviews rather, not track lists, that doesn't make any sense, discussion videos, countdown lists, all that good stuff. With that said, guys, thank you for watching, check out this new album, and stay golden.